Build Aid on Mix. My name's Graham Alexander. I'm now chatting to Dr. Ariane Janse van Rensburg.
Hi.
How are you, Ariane?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. There can't be too many doctorates in architecture in South Africa.
Well, there's a growing number, but they tend to be architects who in academia. So I actually teach design at the University of the Witwatersrand.
Okay.
So that makes it easier.
You've also been involved in some interesting aspects as far as education goes. And I think you mentioned earlier before the show that your doctorate was had to do with education.
Yes, it was. I was working on how to teach first year in a way where one facilitates transformation. Because, as Janette mentioned, we sit with an incredibly rich diversity, and if we're all learning from each other and we each all learning from each other's experiences and understanding how this whole culture works, we have to become better architects. And in fact, if we're not doing that, we're not very relevant.
Yeah.
And at the same time, peer learning is one of the most important things in architecture. It's not what the lecturer says up front. It's what you're learning from doing and from talking to the guys around you. So yes, that was basically the kind of theme.
A couple of statistics. How many ladies start out in architecture in comparison as a percentage to men?
I think we're fairly representative in the fact at WITS we have really exactly the population demographics. So we have just over 50% women students and just under 50% male students, and the same percentages graduate, both at an undergraduate level and at a postgraduate level. Yeah. So the people who are going out there are plenty of really smart young women who are moving into the profession.
We're also going to chat to Marella O'Reilly from SACAP. And we'll see that percentage drops quite dramatically over time. So getting graduates out there is not really the problem. It seems to be keeping the women in the profession.
I think whilst people are studying, they get a lot of support. Their families want them to graduate. It's almost an ideal world in which you can express who you are and learn to be what you want to become. And then when people go out there are many realities of having to earn an income maybe before you have a chance to go back and do your masters and become a professional architect, or having to cope with family things. And so the statistics drop down dramatically after that. But I think the statistics are maybe not quite representative, because there are many people women who graduate as architects and then go and do related things or work in flexible kinds of ways. You know, architecture, it's the most wide-ranging profession that there is. You have to know more about so many things than in any other profession. And you're learning how to be a creative problem solver, and that's something you can apply in many other ways. And many women apply that to finding their niche in architecture. So there are not so many women who come out as the top partners in the very big architectural firms. But I think there's a lot of flexibility. You can make a job in the way that you want to, where you can combine it with other priorities. It's only if you're working in one of the very big firms where it becomes so formal that you can't easily live your life at the same time.
Marella will help us with this question as well. But I mean, if you're going out 50-50 graduates, I mean, you're still an architect. So we're obviously talking about women that are not practicing.
Or not registering.
Or not registering.
Yes.
And that's what's going to be the question is could they be in practices and they're just not registering? They're part of the system, they're doing the job, and registering's sort of not important.
I think, look, they can't get plans through council if they haven't registered. Yeah. But I think there are many people who are working flexibly and maybe assisting somebody else. Somebody else has the the registered practice that's getting the plans passed. I also think many of them are working in things where you're not working as a professional architect. You might be designing furniture, you might be doing interiors, you might be doing all sorts of creative problem-solving things, or working with and in communities where you do not have to have professional registration, but you need to have learned the things that architects learn.
Because not registering could happen to men as well. Do you think it would be more likely that women wouldn't register?
No, I think it's far more likely that women are juggling families and are sometimes disappearing out of the picture for a while. I hope that many of them come back. What's difficult in architecture is if you stay out of it too long, you have got behindhand on gaining experience, you've got behindhand on developing your personal style and your reputation, and the fact that people come to you because I want a building by this person. So it's quite dangerous moving out of the profession. It makes it quite difficult to get back. And I think that's one of the other things that Marella will be talking about, how to support people to get back in. And also if you're doing big projects, you can't do them part-time. You're responsible for the whole project. And then people have to start being inventive and doing things like job sharing. Then two people can be getting the experience of that big project. But it means if you have other priorities in your life, you do have to make sacrifices.
Yeah. A question on how the profession receives women into, I think, particularly bigger practices. But before I ask that question, I was chatting to a young architect, funny enough, on the show some time ago, about salaries and responsibilities and so on when you come in as a so-called intern. You've studied for so many years and you arrive there, and I won't mention the salary, but it was really ridiculous. And one worries, is that a general problem, man or girl, or do you think women would be more susceptible to that?
I think it's a general problem, and maybe we shoot ourselves in the foot. We so want to do what we've been trained to do. It's that we're willing to take fee cuts, and that we're often willing to affirm, in order to get a job, quotes the lowest possible fee, and then they pay the interns the lowest possible salary. And we all need and want the experience, so we do things. But I think men get out of that sooner. I think many women aren't assertive enough about saying, I'm worth more than this. I had an experience myself where when I left, because I was at that stage, it didn't suit me to commute to Johannesburg anymore. Then they suddenly offered me a double salary. And I thought, it's a little bit late in the day.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because it's 5 or 6 years and you're a candidate for a year, subject to you passing the exam. And then if you're going to be an intern for another year or two,
it's 8 years minimum.
Yeah.
And many people take longer than that, because either they're having to pay their way and have to study a bit and then earn some money again, or need to gain experience along the way. So yes, you're in it for the long haul.
Ariane, thank you so much for chatting to us.
Thank you.
I'm now going to chat to Marella O'Reilly. Marella is the Registrar and CEO of SACAP. SACAP is the South African Council for the Architectural Profession. Marella, thank you so much for coming to chat to us.
Hi, Graham. Good to be here again. Thank you.
And I think, Marella, what we're going to chat about is really the glue of what we've chatted to the other ladies and architects about in transformation and women in architecture. SACAP being the sort of umbrella body of architecture, and you guys have an initiative called Women in Architecture SA, or WiASA, I think is the sort of acronym. Tell us a bit about this program.
Well, Graham, WiASA was launched specifically by this fourth-term council because it has identified the severe and dire need for us to transform the culture of the built environment within South Africa, number one. When we say transform the culture, transformation is this very loose word that we tend to hear constantly. However, when we re-look at what will transformation mean within the architectural profession, we need to look at the numbers. Currently, we have about 8,500 registered professionals across the spectrum of the architectural profession. That would be draftsmen, architectural technologists, senior architectural technologists, and PR archs. Those are your professional architects. And when we actually drill down and looked at our statistics, we were somewhat dismayed to see that of the 8,500, just over 1,800 of them are indeed women. That only translates to 22% of our full register. And I think Ariane touched on this a little earlier on to say that maybe there are indeed more of them, but where are they lurking?
Yeah, because they're
Clearly
still
not.
architects, but
Indeed.
30% have disappeared.
Indeed, and part of our objectives is for us to look for them as SACAP, to say, where are you? We need to get you out and put you back to work. So, looking at the statistics, we're looking at launching this specific program structured directly just for women. We've named it WiASA because I think if we have a specific program, that's where we're going to be able to monitor and track the results of the specific objectives. So, the specific objectives of WiASA are the following. Number one, to increase access for black women into the architectural field. Number two, as Ariane spoke to earlier, our demographic is not that we don't get sufficient numbers recruited in to study architecture, but how indeed do we keep them within the field of architecture? And once we've actually looked for them and found them, how are we going to encourage and help these skilled women to build successful, sustainable practices? I think earlier on, Janette also spoke to issues of being the older professional, being there to support and nurture the younger ones who are coming up into the profession. And that is what WiASA is all about, and how we're going to be mobilizing this important transformation project.
Marella, how does one get involved in the initiative?
Well,
and sorry, maybe I should ask first, who can get involved? Anybody that can help with ideas, etc. But then the important question is, how do you do that?
Firstly, we're really looking towards the full stakeholder base of SACAP, and indeed the wider built environment, because I think we need to stop decompartmentalizing the professions within the built environment. There needs to be free movement and openness for this actual transformation to happen. Firstly, from SACAP's perspective, we are looking at our 11 voluntary associations, our VAs. Earlier on, I was very pleased to hear Janette speak about GIFA and the work that all of our voluntary organizations do for us. And the way in which we are opening this, we're saying, use your frameworks and your modalities which you already have. For example, GIFA is going to be hosting a women's breakfast next week on the 23rd. And those are the type of platforms that we're looking at mobilizing existing structures and indeed new structures to say, how do we get women talking about the transformation that needs to be done? There are women's breakfasts, there are publications, there are various different types of modalities that we are looking towards using for this very important transformation to happen within the built environment. And more specifically, for black women to stop and to listen and to say that we can be what we want to see. And I think Janette hit the nail on the head once again earlier on, where she said that we need to embrace communities to make architecture more accessible in every which way that we can.
Yeah. Marella, thank you so much. And before I say goodbye to all these amazing ladies, Kay, who won and what's the answer?
The answer is heart. Well done to a lot of you, got it right. So we've got 3 winners tonight, and they're all women. Kathy, Candy and Jackie. We'll be contacting you tomorrow to find out how we can get your delicious ice cream to you. And just a note to Dirk, we actually do have ice cubes, so it's not going to melt, I promise.
Are we sending it to Dirk?
No, we're not sending it to Dirk.
Oh, he's just checking.
He's just checking.
Okay, Dirk's a clever guy. Kay and Simon, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks to our video man that gets everything onto YouTube for us.
And it's his birthday.
And it's his birthday. Ian, happy birthday. Thanks very much to GIFA, the Gauteng Institute for Architecture, for arranging the show this evening, and our special guests. Thanks to Marella O'Reilly, Janette Simon, to Althea Peacock, Samaya Valley, and to Dr. Ariane Janse van Rensburg and Monica Albonico. Thank you so much, ladies. I think that was a really great show. We do this every Wednesday between 6 and 7. Talk to you next week. Ciao.
Your home with Build-Aid on Mix brings you all sorts of interesting info about building. Graham Alexander chats to different guests every Wednesday evening between 6 and 7. Proudly brought to you by AfriSam. AfriSam, creating concrete possibilities.